The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Science of Triangles. I think it's program number 85. And we are continuing as this consequential election that will affect, I think, all of humanity is now a week away and even less, in a sense. Excuse me. We will continue with our second of the Great Invocations, working to bring the fire of the will to love, the fire of the will to good into the picture. And we, just the way there can be no relenting on the outer side because there's, excuse me, constant manipulation and chicanery going on, so there can be no relenting on the inner side where we try to work as well. So let us align. Let the Lords of Liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, Almighty One. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O Mighty One. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O Mighty One. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O Mighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. Oh. Okay, friends, thank you. And we'll keep our point of attention going for the next week here. This has, as I say, global implications, it's pretty clear that once again we are dealing with that ancient contest between the dweller on the threshold of humanity and its angel of the presence. And one cannot bring forward the soul of humanity in the midst of constant lies and manipulation and the exaltation of personal values over spiritual values. The attempt to undo what hierarchy has worked on so assiduously over some hundreds of years, helping humanity emerge out of medievalism into an age of reason and toward an age of international cooperation, which the founding of the United Nations indicates. So let's work interiorly with our imagination to see the forces of obstruction thwarted and evil cast out, and let us bring in blessing to those who do good. Wherever there is a withering of the law and an uprising of lawlessness on all sides, then I manifest myself from age to age for the upliftment of those, or salvation of those who do good, and the destruction of those who do evil. I think that's pretty close to what is said regarding the change of energies at the end of every age, when the law tends to wither, as we are now witnessing. Now, our work today, but first of all, let me say I'm very happy to see you here and to welcome you, Anne and Annette and Aristide and Catherine, Chris, Frederick, Ishtar, Carrie, Kim, Leslie, Lynette, Mariana, Martha, and Martine, Miro, Natni, and Nesa, Risto and Stephen, Vera, Walter, Zenaidi, and Veronica. I think she's maybe offline, but she'll try to get back. And over here on the staff side so far, we have Michael, Tuya, and myself. So we're here in our 85th program, and we've been examining some of the triangles that are of importance. We're on page 493. And what I tried to do last time was to look at different types of process, or different processes. And I would say, now, if you want this process to occur, what kind of triangle, zodiacally or planetarily, or in terms of the rays, would you focus upon? For instance, if our focus was upon the lower mind, the desire nature and the etheric nature, before it embodied itself in the outer physical form, we would look to Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. I think maybe this one I use too, that if we were looking for the progression from mass consciousness to individual consciousness to group consciousness, what triangle, zodiacal triangle, might you select? And I think the answer came, or at least one of the answers came, that we would move from Cancer with its mass consciousness into early Leo with its focal individual consciousness, and finally to the sign opposite, which would be Aquarius, which denotes group consciousness. If we wanted, for instance, to move from the decision we would have to make about our direction into a state of committed discipleship in which we overcame our obstacles and became the one-pointed disciple, we would, for instance, move from Libra to Scorpio to Sagittarius. And if we wanted to move from into the state of initiation, from a state of struggle in which we dealt with the opposites properly, our last term would be Capricorn. And we would move, let us say, from the struggle, Scorpio, into one-pointed adherence to the goal, Sagittarius, and finally end in the sign Capricorn. Now, of course, we don't have to do these in exact sequence. They don't have to be one sign after another. You can learn something from doing one sign after another, but you can skip around as well if you want to. But here is one that deals with a high state of consciousness, and it is sequential. If you want to move from initiation into being a true world-serving initiate, and finally into world saviorship, you can imagine from Capricorn to Aquarius to Pisces, and so it would go. Now we're going to take up at least one triangle today that is written about here. Looks like the Gemini-Libra-Aquarius, and you will recognize this as an air sign triangle. It has a lot of significance in this very mental age of Aquarius into which we are entering, with that constellation expressing particularly the fifth ray, accompanied by a seventh ray cycle. I mean, it could be accompanied by any type of ray cycle. It just so happens that at this time, the incoming equinoctial Aquarian age is accompanied by a seventh ray cycle. It's a little early in the morning for speaking. So he says, from the standpoint of our theme, which is the evolution of consciousness. And always remember that when we study esoteric astrology, it really is the astrology of the growing and deepening consciousness, and not the astrology of what will happen to me next. I mean, that might be taken into it, but that's not the important part. The important part is what you extract from the circumstances, whether apparently good or bad, and not whether your personality suffers or is happy. Those are incidental factors. So this, when we're studying the science of triangles, we keep on thinking, what does it mean for the evolution of our consciousness? And you know, when you look at your major triangle of rising signs, sun and moon, the direction of the life is pretty well given. It must never be forgotten. DK is writing in black, and you know my commentary is here in red, whatever will stand out. It must never be forgotten that the aim, our aim, is to bring the solar angel, known by many names, here the son of mind, or called in the secret doctrine the divine Manasaputra, the mind-born son, into the seat of power. Now that's the question, you know, in our own life. Who or what is running the show? And has the solar angel, represented by the angel of the presence on the higher mental plane, has it really emerged into the seat of power in our life incarnation? And I'm sure that there are, for people like ourselves, variations as to who's in the seat of power. The solar angel, you know, is a what's called a returning nirvani in the previous solar system, a high state of development relative to that solar system was achieved, and then further lessons, probably on the in the Syrian system, and by means of the cosmic astral plane, further instruction was taken to become the solar angel. So when that happens, we, when the return comes, we have the opportunity to become conscious. We, emerging animal man, over many millions of years, have the opportunity to become conscious of that which the solar angel knows, at least in part, not fully, of course. We will have our opportunity when the bulk of the present humanity will choose the fourth path and be trained as solar angels. So we have the fourth kingdom of nature, the fourth creative hierarchy, and the fourth path. And all of that's lined up with the idea that we live on the fourth globe of the fourth chain of the fourth scheme. A lot of fours and the hope of harmony. So this task of bringing the solar angel and its projection, because in a way it stays within the cosmic ethers, but it projects itself into the dense physical body of the solar logos, and it shows up as a kind of angel of the presence, underlying the causal body which it has helped to build. So when this is occurring, to put the solar angel via the angel of the presence into the seat of power, it says, this is preeminently entrusted to three great lives who function through Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Now, every constellation has its Lord, we can call it. That's what DK calls it. A great being that functions through the solar logoi of that constellation. So it must be, you know, a tremendous being through each constellation. But then when you think about it, in cosmos, there are those beings that function through galaxies. So how long does it keep on going, you know, in terms of the elevation of different types of beings? But anyway, to put the solar angel into the seat of power, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are found. And I've said here that we wish to attend to the directives of our solar angel because it knows the plan, or at least enough of the plan to guide us, and has had the human being, which we are, under guidance and supervision ever since especially since the work of the fifth petal. Before that, maybe the solar angel is not so active. And the general evolution of man is carried forward under the guidance of the third aspect of divinity, the second aspect of divinity. But by the time you really are starting to become a true self-conscious individual, you're going to have what's called a downward gazing soul. The solar angel also has its own projects. And so it's kind of amusing sometimes when DK says, don't be bothering your solar angel all the time because it has its own work to do. He said something of that nature. And we, being self-centered human beings, we kind of think that the only work the solar angel has to do is to take care of us. But just think of a parent and a child. Obviously, parenting is a big deal, but the parent also has other responsibilities. So this opening of the fifth petal is really a crisis point. I think it's very much a process ruled by Leo and by Scorpio. And hence the struggle between those two signs which are in square to each other. So many of the people we have in the world that are dictatorially inclined and egotistically self-absorbed can be found working on the early part of the fifth petal. But by the time they crash and burn in the middle of it all, they can become aspirants and even first-degree initiates finally. So we witness a lot of that going on in the world of politics. And then I made a distinction here between the angel of the presence and the solar angel, but my thought is lately that I'll just put it down. The angel of the presence is a projection. of the solar angel, who is a returning Nirvani from a previous Maha Manvantara. Now, going on, so when you study the science of triangles, there's so much astrology that goes with it, and rayology that goes with it. After all, surrounding us in our planetary, solar systemic, and cosmic environment are all these entities of a greater nature, and in a number of them, we, as it were, live and move and have our being. So, to study their interrelationships is the substance of our work. Now, when you get right down to the practical human level, which we will again tonight in our broadcast for the normal triangle meditations, it's different. We're dealing with human beings and soul-infusing personalities, and we're dealing with goodwill and light and all the things we need on a practical level. But where does all this come from, really? And it obviously has cosmic sources. Just going to take a little drink of water here. Okay, so a point arises here, which is of real moment, or perhaps I should say that a question might here be asked, says the Tibetan. How does it happen that one tiny, non-sacred planet should be considered of such importance that these great lives, capital L, should be concerned with the unfoldment of mind in humanity? And by the way, when you're dealing with air signs, mind is very often involved. So, the fire of mind is fire. But there's another sense in ordinary astrology where air signs take over the function of developing mind, especially mind in its higher brackets. So, how does it happen? And then DK kind of puts us in our place. And he says, well, the answer is that these beings are not, that they are not so concerned with the development of mind in humanity. It is humanity which, under the urge of great inflowing and outflowing energies, is concerned with the problem of mental development. So basically, a lot of DK's work, and I think we recognize it, don't we, is to take us off the center of our own stage. You can't read a treatise on cosmic fire or a number of his other books without a strong impulse towards becoming decentralized. It's a bit like the medieval consciousness that conceived of the earth as the center of everything, and the entire cosmos would revolve around it. And then we had the Copernican revolution, which pointed to the sun as the great center. And that was much resisted. And then further, we went into a revolution which displaced the sun as the center of our system. And it just turned out to be one of many trillions of suns in diverse galaxies. So ever the tendency is towards decentralization. DK gives us something here that we can memorize. Discipline, dispassion, discrimination, decentralization, spell it right, and finally, detachment. So those 5 Ds tell us the story of how we are to deal with our physical etheric body through discipline, our emotional body through dispassion, our mental body through discrimination, our personality through decentralization, and the whole thing, including the soul, with detachment. And probably if we went beyond that, we'd put in something like, divinity, but it would have to be an action word. And I don't want to try to think about that. So we are the ones who have to deal with our own mental development, and when we can, we will have the soul-infused mind, the mind held steady in the light of the soul. Now, through the study of Master DK's work, more and more that becomes possible. If you've been at it a long time, I think I've been now studying his material closely for 49 years, and Theosophy before that. And I definitely recognize that the soul light infuses the mind far better than it did in the earlier days. And I'm sure many of you who have been with the teaching for a long time will recognize that to be the case. So, if we're really going to have mental development and really going to have the kind of progression that we see here, our solar angel is very much involved and is speeding us along compared to what would happen if we did not fall under its supervision. We would, it's somewhere in the teaching, he says we would be very poorly developed, even less so than the most undeveloped human being on the planet at this time. Okay. So in the last analysis, says the Tibetan, the problem of response to and interpretation of the environing contacts, that's a mental process, I guess, to a degree, is one which is to be found on every planet, and particularly upon the non-sacred planets. What are the non-sacred planets? The Earth, Mars, Pluto, a non-sacred planet veiled by the sun, and a non-sacred planet veiled by the moon. So the sun and the moon, although, they are not really planets at all anymore, and the sun never was, well, at least not now, they are considered in terms of astrology as non-sacred planets, but it's really what's behind them that is of importance. I think Dr. Baker, or maybe the Tibetan too, tells us that there is non-sacred second-ray planet that the sun veils, and the non-sacred fourth-ray planet that the moon veils. So, in the last analysis, the problem of response to and interpretation of the environing context is one which is found on every planet. And since especially the non-sacreds, because they're still working on mind, and other sacred planets have emerged from that stage. So this response must be called forth, evoked, not only in the fourth kingdom in nature, but eventually in all kingdoms. We're moving towards the capacity of mind on our planet, and we will become a sacred lighted sphere within the solar system. The capacity of mind will be with us. Right now, our response, the response of the fourth kingdom, is quite incomplete. DK tells us our solar system is one in which sensitivity to contact is the dominant quality. So think of it, Leo is the sign of sensitivity, we are told. I suppose sensitivity to the self and to, the not self. The Leo person is very sensitive to what it is compared to what it is not. And then Sirius is called the brilliant star of sensitivity. And then our solar logos is astrally polarized right now, and hence the sensitivity to touch as it becomes more and more cosmically aware in the mental sense. So our solar system is one in which sensitivity to contact is the dominant quality. We don't have that on our planet very fully developed. It's coming. Our solar logos is in the process of becoming cosmically aware, just the way Sirius is now, and it is driven by need, like all entities are, for greater completion, and environing cosmic circumstance in which he has to express his quality. But that's the same as all of us. We're driven by our need for greater completion, and we're driven by circumstance as well. That's the microcosmic situation. But it's paralleled on high levels by the solar logos. And our solar logos is driven by cosmic circumstance to develop love wisdom. And both of these words are descriptive and expressive of the consciousness aspect. I think sometimes wisdom is transitional between intelligence and love. At least I'm going to offer that as a possibility. Wisdom can be considered transitional between intelligence and love. And I think I'm kind of in purple here, and I've got to be careful, otherwise it's going to blend together, and we will not be able to distinguish what the Tibetan is saying from what I'm commenting upon. Okay, but he does give a very good definition here. Love is response to contact. And this, in the human being, means understanding, inclusiveness, and identification. Right there's a sentence one could ponder on a long time. Love is response to contact. And this in the human being, because it probably means something else in other beings, means understanding, and that itself has unsuspected meanings that we have discussed in the Glamour book in the very beginning. Inclusiveness and identification. These are qualities of the Christ, right? Loving understanding, loving inclusiveness, loving identification. Wisdom connotes skill in action as the result of developed love and the light of understanding. So in this particular case, he places wisdom following love. Here, wisdom is placed following love. Now, the interesting thing is that the Lord of wisdom preceded in manifestation the Lord of love. And you know who I'm talking about, the Buddha and the Christ. The Lord of wisdom and of light was the Buddha, and he achieved on the moon chain. The Lord of love followed him, and always does by a little bit. He is the Christ, and he achieved in this our fourth chain, with the Lord of wisdom continuing to achieve alongside him. Really, they're so closely related that maybe there's no need to stratify them. They develop step by step together. So wisdom, it is awareness of requirements and ability to bring together into a fused relationship the need and that which will meet it. Aren't these wonderful definitions? Service is essentially a scientific mode of expressing love wisdom under the influence of one or other of the seven rays according to the soul ray of the serving disciple. So right here on page 494 is something to which we should really attend when we're looking for the definition of love and wisdom. The whole problem is one concerning our planetary logos, who, by the way, you know, we're told he has a personality problem cosmically considered. And he's not yet to the point where his emotional vehicle is controlled. And maybe when the focus is truly in the solar plexus center instead of the sacral center. And then he tells us there will be some beneficent results when that focus takes place. And those results will affect humanity and its level of crime regarding the sacral center. So this whole problem is one concerning our planetary logos, who, remember, has a soul upon the love wisdom ray. It might be said, in order to make our theme comprehensible to you, I love it, that the evolutionary process from the standpoint of the ordinary human being is to make the non-sacred planet, our Earth, responsive to cosmic contacts, thus bringing more interrelated and inner integration into the logoic body of expression. And here the word logoic here the word let's see, logoic. I wonder if I Okay, I have two keyboards here in front of me. So, logoic means planetary logoic. Oftentimes that word will mean solar logoic, but now we're talking about the planetary logos of our Earth. So cosmic impacts must be responded to by our planetary logos in greater degree. Now, what's the parallel for us? We have to learn how to respond to the impacts coming from the cosmic ethers. That's our first step. As far as the cosmic astral plane, we can put that off for a little while. Let's just say the Christ and the Buddha are learning to respond to the cosmic astral plane. But the field in which the masters work is pretty well the cosmic ethers, and we have to learn how to respond to those impulses, namely buddhi, atma, monadic, and finally logoic impulses. So this is a purpose. The evolutionary process is to make our non-sacred planet, our Earth, responsive to a much wider variety of cosmic contacts. We don't really know how far the ring past knot of response of our planetary logos goes. Every one of our planetary logoi has some connection, of course, with our solar logos, and probably with certain neighboring stars, and apparently with the 7 stars of the Great Bear, 7 major stars, each one of which has a kind of supervision over one or more planetary logoi. Okay. So when we can do this, our Earth will have a more interrelated and inner integration, and so will we on our own level. There are other purposes, but it is only after the third initiation that man can begin to comprehend them. So we'll have to let that go and watch out for hints. I'm only going to go so far here. Maybe, I'll have to take it up next time. Of course, that will be pretty well during the election, and I think Tui and I have some things planned which are more targeted to that event. So we'll see whether this occurs in 1 week or 2. These 3 constellations, now these 2 words are funny, strange. Cyclically, yes, but eternally? But except the word eternal has a lot more to do with cycles than with endless duration. So maybe they are appropriate words. These 3 constellations, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, or namely mind, supermind, and universal mind. That's how we can apportion the levels of mind to these 3. These 3 constellations, cyclically and eternally, leading the eternal pilgrim, that's the monad, along the path of mental unfoldment, produce in him the final stage of mental evolution upon the path of initiation. Well, maybe, if Aquarius finally brings in universal mind, which is probably cosmic mind, the cosmic mental plane, and its functioning, then indeed maybe we can say the final stage of mental development when it comes to a man. Now, the Buddha achieved this. He achieved a cosmic mental touch, which is really extraordinary. So, on the high cosmic mental plane, he achieved something that no human being before him had achieved. And then the Christ did this with cosmic love of the cosmic astral plane. Illumination. See, the Buddha had an illumination, much different from the illumination that we have at the third initiation. Different traditions, they call it enlightenment philosophically. If you're in the Zen tradition, they call it Satori. Maybe they would call it awakening somewhere, But it's just a dim reflection of the illumination that the Buddha achieved from the cosmic mental plane. So this final stage is achieved through 3 constellations. Then you kind of begin to wonder, what was the Buddha's horoscope after all? Certainly Taurus, certainly Scorpio, and I do believe Pisces was prominent too, but what about Aquarius? Well, one day we'll know, and it seems that in some papers that he's given, the Tibetan hinted at the Buddha's horoscope as being largely a Taurus-Pisces horoscope. But that doesn't mean that the prince, Gautama or Siddhartha, had that horoscope. It means the true Buddha that used the prince in the same way that Christ used the initiate Jesus. So a final stage of mental evolution is reached. Illumination, the term applied to that final stage, is a synthesis of instinct, intellect, and intuition. And that directs us to Alice Bailey's wonderful little book, From Intellect to Intuition, and she takes in the instinct as well. So I'm saying here that this type of illumination has to do with the initiation of revelation at the 5th degree and beyond. Because what basically the Buddha had been an initiate of the 5th degree for a long time. And basically his great achievement was taking the 6th degree. And then 500 years later, the Christ took the 6th degree. Now, let's see how much of this I want to do. I think that it's smart to wait for the development of these coming triangles. So let's not get fully into this, except to say that reviewing that to bring the solar angel into really active control of our incarnational life, the 3 signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, are very effective. That when we strive for our higher mental development, these 3 signs are effective. That they will be important signs in the Aquarian age because it's a air sign age, and therefore the 2 other air signs come along with Aquarius. And so we will have, if we take them in order, fraternity, Gemini, equality, Libra, and liberty, Aquarius. And the three lords of liberation will have their moments of guiding humanity. Right now, the humanity is dealing with that Lord who has to do with freedom, liberty. So those are, I think, pretty well, what we have been discussing here. We've had a very good definition of love and wisdom, and the question is which precedes which, or do we need to care, or should we look at them together? What I didn't mention is that the real love-wisdom initiation is the seventh. And it occurred, the duality of Gemini and the duality of love-wisdom. And yeah, it occurs in relation to the sign Gemini. So this is an excellent definition to which we will want to adhere. We'll want to study that. And we are looking at, we've been looking at the 5 Ds in terms of our development. And we've been looking at the issue of mental development for our planet. Now, we have to have some kind of emotional stabilization first, and then will come the kind of transfiguration for our planet. And we've been looking at the idea of why are the great entities so concerned with humanity's development? And the answer is they are not. But we can use their energies to promote mental development. So I think that's pretty well what we have been looking at today for this first section. And now I'm going to, I think I'll begin here next time. And I cannot tell you whether that will be next week, the immediate day after election, where probably we will have been staying up all night, but we'll see. So this is the end of this, and it's been a morning session, and now we've progressed to one other page. And the next one will be number 86. And let's see whether it will be the 4th of November. Maybe the 4th, and maybe not. So we'll keep you informed. And I'll just say maybe. And basically, this would be an evening session. We'll have to get this straightened out because the events coming up are very big. Okay, friends, so we've had a little review and we've looked at the beginning of the presentation of the subject of the triple air signs for ordinary higher and lower mind, Gemini, for supermind, atmic mind, which is Libra, and for universal mind, which is Aquarius. It comes down to the atmic plane, but it originates particularly on the higher levels of cosmos. And we're not going to be expecting ourselves to achieve the 6th initiation anytime soon, but perhaps due to the writings of Master DK and his advice, we can begin to envision taking the 3rd initiation sometime during the age of Aquarius or Capricorn, i.e. within the next 5,000 years or so, and maybe sooner, depending upon need and depending upon how we learn to apply ourselves or not. And basically, I'm trying to, let's see here. I don't know if I can make this happen, but 1, 2, 3. Maybe that's it. Okay. Well, it's not going to do it, but that's far enough. All right. Let's go on and see what you have to say or question or comment upon, whether it's on these matters or in general, if there are no comments on these matters, within the field of occultism.
Okay, Michael, housekeeping. The end of Science of Triangles number 85, page 493 through 494 at above. Yeah.
There we go. Is that correct? I think.
We'll start
We're
on
beginning on
494.
1.
The line above,
Yeah.
493 through 494.
Correct. Okay. Right.
And it began at 6 a.m. GMT.
Right. Okay. And again, 6
Right.
p.m. down here, right? Okay. Okay.
If it is on November 4th, it will be in the evening. If it is the following week, it will be in the morning.
Okay. Okay.
So
that's a good point. And then let's just say that. Whoops. Does anybody know? I've been meaning to ask. I know how to go backwards to a move that I made before. It's a kind of a Control Z. How do you go forward? How do you go forward if you've erased something you don't want to erase? Does anybody know that? Control Z takes us backward by steps, and then if you want to go forward from, having gone backward, if you want to say, oh, I didn't want to erase that.
Well, I
how
don't
do you
go backward.
Well, I know someone knows this, and I need to know it because I'm always erasing things that I and I don't
Walter
want to
comes to the
retype
rescue.
them
Walter
all.
writes,
Yes, Walter.
Control Y does redo. Thank you,
Okay,
Walter. Control
Y.
Y.
Okay, redo. Okay, and that will take me forward. For instance, if I've gone backward 2 steps and I said, oh no, I didn't mean to erase those things, will Control Y restore them?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Walter. Appreciate that. I've been busy erasing. Yes, dear?
And sometimes it is also Control C.
Oh, that's for copy, dear. That's for copy.
Yes, but it is sometimes working. I have worked and
okay.
I have managed to do. But Control Z, when you go backwards, normally it does take only 1 step and it returns to that place where you were.
Okay, okay. It's just that sometimes I mistakenly erase something and then I want to go forward to where it was still existing. So kind of a restore. My favorite method.
Then use if you recognize, let's say that you did something and you just then recognize you did it. So then use Control Z, like Joro. Control Z. That gives you the step backwards, normally only 1 step backwards.
Okay, well, I'll experiment now that I have your input and Walter's input. And, I'll try not to do my usual, which is press all the keys at the same time and hope. All right, so we'll...
Yes, that is only the point of this.
Yeah.
When one is so advanced and in one being, then you can do that, all the keys at the same time.
Yeah.
But not before that.
Important technique.
And
Okay.
Stephen adds, Walter is right. Control Z to undo. Control Y is to undo.
Okay, to restore. Great.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, you're good. I feel much more secure now. Thank you.
Now you're a
All right.
technical expert.
I tell you, I mean, you know, 2 little moves that can make a difference. Okay. Now, does anybody want to say anything, ask anything, comment anything?
And Veronica, bless you.
Okay.
And Veronica writes, how do we practically in everyday life use these triangles for any given problem? Personal, group, country, planetary. Do we invoke the energies, the planets, and the accompanying rays?
Well, you know, it depends on how complex you want to get. In the book, The Destiny of the Nations, he gives us, for instance, the soul and personality ray. He gives us the soul and personality sign. He gives us the 3 rulers of the soul sign, the 3 rulers of the personality sign. Then he gives us the rays of the rulers. For instance, well, I'll give you an example here. The United States. He gives us 2nd ray, 6th ray, soul personality. Then he gives us Aquarius and Gemini. So for Aquarius, he will give Uranus, Jupiter, and the moon. For Gemini, he will give Mercury, Venus, and Earth. And then he takes one more step, and he looks at the 3 rulers of the rising sign, so to speak, the soul sign, and he says, well, Uranus brings in the 7th ray. So what has that to do with how the United States functions? Jupiter brings in the 2nd ray, and the moon brings in the 4th ray, and maybe veiling as well, Vulcan, Neptune, and Uranus again. Then he goes to the personality, which is Gemini, and he says, Mercury brings in the 4th ray, Venus brings in the 5th ray, and the Earth brings in the 3rd ray. He uses the 3rd ray rather than the 2nd. And then he will trace those rays in the functioning of the country. Now, you can do that with an individual also. You can say, well, here is the soul ray, and here is the personality ray. Now, of those 2, we should try to be as sure as we can be. And it takes some observation and study and maybe some years. But then go to your rising sign, and how does that rising sign work in your incarnated life? But then go to the 3 rulers, or sometimes 2 rulers, of the rising sign, and how do they work? And what rays do they bring in? Now, you put all that information together, also, you know, and plus he adds the capital city of a country, and he takes the sign that rules the capital city, and then he takes the rays that come through that sign, but pretty much the sign. Like for Paris, he takes Virgo and Capricorn, and for Washington D.C. capital, he takes Cancer and Sagittarius, you know, and so forth. You combine them all, you're making quite a mixture, and you have the necessary developmental hints you need. But if I just found that there was one triangle only You see, what I've just given is a pretty big picture of how you look at all the energies related to a nation, or maybe the significant energies related to an individual. But if I was just to take one triangle, for instance, my moon sign, sun sign, and rising sign, then I would examine the tendencies of rotary motion, more spiral motion, breaking out of the rotary motion through the sun sign and its esoteric ruler. There's a couple of techniques there. And then I'd look for spiral cyclic motion and a driving forward at the rising sign. And I would just analyze the trends, low, middle, and high, for each one of those planets or signs. And I would just try to see how they fit within the context of the life. So, there's no great mystery about it. We just have to say, what are we trying to cultivate? Now, I could become even simpler and say, you don't have to do a thing about your moon sign, except to say to make sure it doesn't get out of control. It can form a habitual basis for things, either good or bad. It can be a prison or it can be a basis. The sun sign is the sun of probability. And if you keep going along as a fairly developed personality, you're going to use your sun sign, and you have to see how it works out in your life. But where the real task comes in for people like ourselves is to examine the rising sign, because it has a driving energy. And the rising sign is also called the sun. It's called the sun, interestingly enough. It's called a sun of possibility, which means that you may not ever in your life employ it in the right way. But if you really give meditation to it, examining how it seems to be working out in your life, if it is, and then cultivate the thought forms that will, and the actions which will help it work out, then you're going to make progress. And that's just very practical. Now, you can do that with any points in your horoscope. In other words, very simple. How do I get the best out of this position? Maybe you'll see it working out kind of in a not particularly progressive manner because you know something about the lower tendencies of that position. But then you begin to meditate upon higher possibilities for any position within your horoscope. And then you watch your life and you make the attempt through the directed power of thought and action to use that particular indicator in a positive way. I don't know, can I give you an example? If I have Cancer rising, which I do, should that be expended only on the immediate family, as I have in my life, carefully in that regard? Or is there some kind of larger inclusive field to which that Cancerian energy should be applied? And of course, I'm hinting that there is, obviously. And then have I done it, or have I just stayed at home, symbolically speaking? Well, I think I've moved from staying at home to looking at the wholeness of things and try to approach that wholeness in an inclusive manner. So concentrate on the factors, planetary and zodiacal and ray, which are suggested by your horoscope and by your ray chart, and simply practically get the best out of them through your meditation, and make sure you apply what you come up with. and then it, it's not easy, but at least it's clear. Okay, well, thank you for that question.
Michael, can I add something?
Yes, go ahead, dear.
I think the question was, what can we practically do in the world, or how it was? Can you repeat, Michael, Stacy? What was the question?
Here it is.
The question, how do we practically in everyday life use these triangles for any given problem?
Right. So if I add to this, Michael, the triangle work is about invocation. It is about the science of invocation, which is just coming science. So we practice this in our everyday life just by using Great Invocation. This is the most important thing to be used, and he describes about that we try to make an impact in higher levels of these great beings who can actually do something via this invocation, which is rising from all these little tiny triangles. And I have been studying that during the work that we have done. And I was realizing that, yeah, we can do many ways the Great Invocation. He talks about how we practically do not even sound Om correctly, that there is much to be done, that we would be really, really sounding Om. That is one of the most powerful sacred words for us this time. But because these are so far away how we humans are functioning, we are using our concrete mind to make effects in the world. But this triangle work is making effect the way via the invocation that those great ones can do the work. The triangle work will transform the square-like etheric field into the triangular. And we need that in order that, this is the technical part of it, we need that in order that the soul qualities can descend. It cannot descend without the triangle. That's why what is enough at this time, what he says, is that there is a true triangles which are based upon love, based upon goodwill. What then, even though we don't and cannot have this big picture, but it is functioning because the quality of love is there, and that is needed. And then the triangle of lights at this time, when we are able to stand together, and then the triangle of wills which are coming after these two have been established. So in everyday problem, I guess it could be so, having this background, what Michael was telling, so that like brief work for us, but then just deeply align when we announce our friends, our beloved friends, co-workers in that triangle, that we really stand there. I imagine always the Christ in the center, because for me that I am putting my mind with the Christ brings a certain type of way of being in everything. Reminds me about that, the brotherhood and sisterhood and our human family. And then use the Great Invocation and practice that, to use that the Great Invocation is sounded really consciously. Just and not thinking about the words, but what this word is making as an impact. Follow the energy, what it starts to create. This would be my tiny practical advice for this, because we as disciples, not yet, we do not have power enough generated, and that is a fact. We have generated the union between the disciples, but we have not been created such a power that we can force anything or really change. We just have to trust the law and stand within that, let's say, the problem, and the climber meditation is giving us hints what to do in the group. But this triangle work is basically about that we sound the Great Invocation very consciously and make sure that this energy is every day transmitted and invoked. And that is how DK says that the change is possible to happen. And then if we keep our triangles living, that we practice this triangle work every day, then in these emergencies, as it is said, that the Buddhas of activity can use the triangles in emergencies. So our part is to make sure that we have living, alive triangles so that they are ready to be used if these great ones needs to have some on this side of the veil, some vehicle for them to be used.
You know, yeah, I think that of course is the most important thing, to do the triangle work as DK suggested it, and that is the I would say the general inspiring and helpful approach. It's a bit like esoteric healing. You know, there's two modes of healing. I haven't studied it as much as I should, but there's the kind of radiatory healing, in which he says we're working in general with soul energy. And then there's magnetic healing, where we are manipulating the currents having to do with specific chakras. Now, obviously, he's recommending do the radiatory healing because we don't know enough yet to do magnetic healing in the right way. Well, it's the same way with triangles. The general goodwill, light, great invocation, hierarchy, you know, this is an invocative act, and it brings us closer to hierarchy and hierarchy closer to us. That's like radiatory healing. And the kind of thing that I was suggesting was you have specific triangles for specific problems. That's a little bit more detailed work, and it requires that we really understand the specifics of the energies. And I would say that will come later, and we're in the process of developing that kind of understanding right now. So the main thing is to do the triangles, as Tuya was saying, and as DK is suggesting to us, but to study what's beneath it, that we are also doing in this more scientific approach, more fifth ray, more detailed approach. I think that's clear. Okay, let's thank you, Tuya. Let's go on, and let's see. I'm getting some technical advice here.
Yes,
Michael, would you kindly copy this whole thing? I'm not doing so well copying what people are saying in the chat box. Okay. And send it out to us. I tried, but I'm not doing.
Okay. Yeah. Ishtar, in response to your explanation, asked, do we look at esoteric rulers of the signs only, or exoteric as well?
Both. And not only do you look at the, let's say that we, how does he say in, he gives an example in Aquarius. You look at both the Uranus, which is exoteric, and you look at Jupiter, which is esoteric, and that is in the life of the developing disciple. You have to look at both of them. But now, the sun sign. You would think that when it comes to the rising sign, you look for the esoteric ruler. When it comes to the sun sign, you look for the exoteric ruler, but it's not that simple. In order to make the transition from the normal, probable way you will spend your energy via the sun sign, you choose also the esoteric ruler of the sun sign, which is transitional into the rising sign, where you definitely are working with the esoteric ruler. But now I want to make one more caveat. The rising sign does appear very early in life, and it has a very material expression at first. Before later in life, it develops its spiritual expression. And that means that the exoteric ruler of the rising sign is also important when you're considering what is the physical body and the basis of everything in the material sense. So I don't pay so much attention to that, but if I was doing normal astrology, I would look also at the exoteric ruler of the rising sign. How it is right now, I might look at the exoteric ruler of the moon, but later when the moon is transformed, I'd look at the esoteric ruler. I for sure look at the exoteric ruler of the sun sign, but if I want to make a transition into a higher type of energy in the rising sign, I look at the esoteric ruler of the sun sign. It helps me get to my rising sign. And when I'm in the rising sign, at my stage, our stage of development as mature people who are looking into esoteric studies, I choose the esoteric ruler of the rising sign. Now, there's a triangle between your, let's call them exoteric, esoteric, and hierarchical rulers. And the question about hierarchical rulers, some try to apply that early on. I don't think it works so well, but if you are a confirmed initiate of the 3rd, 4th, or 5th degree, your hierarchical rulers will also be brought into consideration. And if the monad is really something in your life that is real, instead of just words like it is for so many of us, choosing the esoteric and the hierarchical ruler of the point opposite the sun sign will give you something about monadic influence in this incarnation. Just the way the sun sign keeps changing, so the monadic point opposite the sun sign keeps changing. If I'm born in Aries this time, I'll have Libra in the monadic point. But if I were born in Capricorn in my next life, I'm crossing my fingers, so maybe it doesn't happen, okay? If I was born in Capricorn in my next life, then the sign Cancer would deliver something about monadic influence. So it's a little more complex than we might normally think, but what I would want you to take away from what I've just said is that when you want to make a transition from your sun sign to your rising sign, choose the higher aspects of your sun sign and make a bridge, and choose the esoteric ruler of your sun sign and make a bridge to your rising sign. See, sometimes the simple things are the most important. Like, what we were talking about and what Tuya was mentioning, triangles is a great invocation of love and light, and that's the most important thing. But in a course like this, we get into some of the details along the 5th ray line. And even the 2nd ray is the ray of detailed unity. So we study a lot of the specifics, but we cannot forget the main things, which are oftentimes the simple things. Like, do we have a heart full of love? Do we have a lighted consciousness? Are we sharing it with other people who have the same? And are we using the Great Invocation, which is bringing down the higher energies and bringing and making the reappearance of the Christ and his hierarchy more easily accomplished? That's the simple thing, and that's the most important. Okay, let's go on.
Well, I'm having a little trouble understanding Anna's comment, so while I'm asking about that, Ishtar continues, do we use the sign mantras as invocations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not? You know, with, for instance, if you have the whatever sign, you know, if I say, suppose I have Leo rising, and I say, I am that, instead of just I am, you know, that's true too, but I am that. And you ponder that, and you get the sense that indeed, yes, you are the soul. And suppose you are prepared to go into the oneness consciousness, and you use the Leo mantra, I am that and that am I, which is a lot like thou art that in the Vedanta or the Upanishads. Definitely, it has the capacity to call in that higher energy if we really if we have what's called an understanding use of the mantra. So basically, absolutely, use those 12 mantras as you're attempting to summon the energies to be part of your causal body and part of your energy system. Yet now, as far as the lesser mantras go, you don't need to invoke on them. You can just understand them. You know, if I say, go forth into matter, well, that happened a long time ago. As long as you understand what it was all about, I think that's the Pisces ordinary mantra. Or if you want to reincarnate under Aries, you say, let form again be sought. But there's no reason why you have to use that for an invocation. Just for understanding, you would use it, noticing that some people indeed, well, the crocodile swallows the heart and back you go into incarnation. But if you say, I come forth and from the plane of mind I rule, that can be used as an invocation of the monad to the higher mind. And you would rule with willpower from the higher mind, and that can be used profitably as an invocation to bring in that quality of will that you need. Okay. Now.
I haven't got a response from Anna yet, but I can read the part I do understand. We unify aspects of our souls and link them to the cosmic grid. Developing mind leads to activation of the crown chakra and 144 petals that relate to the number of the grid between solar logos on his own plane and our something.
Sustenance or something, well, you know what is interesting, 144, it's in the Treatise on White Magic. It's the number of the saved. Okay, now, you know, when you become a good Christian or something, you understand that the number of people saved from, hell or whatever will basically be 144,000, something like that. But DK explains that 144 is the way to count the number of petals that should be opened in the normal chakric system. So I forget exactly how he does it, but we can go into white magic, and he totals that. He totals that so that it represents a completely open system and a completely developed and unfolded system. And he adds 3 zeros, one for each one of the vehicles. And hence, the esoteric interpretation of the number of the saved is also 144,000, but it has a different meaning in terms of the energy system and the 3 vehicles. Now, I don't know whether I would succeed in finding it. If you know, it's been a long time since I've looked at that, but if I put in here 144, you know, there's only going to be a page, and that's not going to be what I want. So I have to maybe spell it out 144, like that. And on page 199 and 200, there are some petal calculations. So let's read this because it's kind of fun to read, and it shows you the difference between occult interpretation and interpretation that is more conventional and is found in Bible and other probationary texts. He says that the Christian Bible, and probably he would point to other Bibles, are for probationers. Now, we are trying to become disciples in the field of occultism. It's a different thing. Okay, here we go. The 5 centers and their 48 petals are synthesized, therefore, into the 2-petaled lotus, and then we have 48 plus 2 equals 50, the number of the perfected personality, which incidentally is a Syrian number. For 5 is the number of man, and 10 is that of perfection. Symbolically also, now when he uses that word, we have to be careful about literally versus symbolically. Symbolically also, if the sum total of the 48 petals of the 5 centers, how does it go? You know, like 4 and 6 is 10, and 6 is, and 10 is 16. I think there are 10 petals in the solar plexus. So let's see, 4 and 6, which is based on it. So that's 20 up to the solar plexus, and 12 is 32, and 16 more for the throat center is 48. So that's correct. If the sum total of the 48 petals of the 5 centers is added to the 96 petals of the center between the eyebrows, the number 144 appears. This number signifies the completed work of the 12 creative hierarchies, 12 times 12, and thus the bringing together of the subjective soul and the objective body in perfect union and at one-ment. This is the consummation. To these figures, 144, add that of the number 1000, the number of the petals in the lotus of the head center, at least approximately, and you have the number of the saved in the book of Revelation. It's not revelations, it's revelation. The 144,000 who can stand before God. And that's not people, that's petals. For the three ciphers which are found indicate the 1,000, indicate the personality, pardon me, when man has completed within himself the great work, when the number 144,000 is seen as symbolizing his point of attainment, then he can stand before God, standing now not only before the angel of the presence, but before the very presence itself. In other words, he's going to develop monadic consciousness. So that's a very important paragraph when dealing with the number 144. And as far as the number, it being the number of the grid between the solar logos on his own plane, and and what plane is that? We'd have to look at that, and our SUSTE, and I'm not sure what number, what that means, but anyway, system. Okay, there we go. And we can look at 144 and try to see what relation it has to the solar logos, but basically the 12 times 12 gives 144, and in relation to the solar logos right now, we are given 12 creative hierarchies. So maybe we can derive the 144 in that way. I think if you put, Anna, if you put together what you have here with what the Tibetan said, we'll have a pretty close look at what 144 means to our planet and in our solar system. It all depends on what we consider the creative hierarchies to be, and we're given 12 of them. And the creative hierarchies, and this is important, are not just related to our planet. They are related to the entire solar system, because those hierarchies are like almost like kingdoms of nature. Well, or they are groupings of monads, let's say, that are found throughout the solar system. And so the idea of the 12 planets and the 12 signs and the 12 creative hierarchies enter into this computation. And when we're talking about 12 creative hierarchies on 12 planets, then we get our 144. And then, of course, we have to add the ciphers for the personality. So this is a little venture into esoteric numerology. And there's more to be worked out, obviously. All right. What else?
I am not seeing any other hands raised. Anna writes, yes, and the idea of unification presents.
Yes, unification, completion. DK tells us that right now we have 10 planets, but the truth of the matter is we will have 12 major planets, which is not to say that all of them are sacred yet, but we will have 12, because the planet veiled by the sun and by the moon have to be counted in there as well. And so there will come a time when the creative hierarchies, when the planets, and when the signs of the zodiac, what is it? 1728, if we calculate, okay, wait a second. No, that's wrong. Where am I? Why am I not there? Okay, this is it. 144 times 12 equals 1728. Okay. And that is another important number of 12 times 12 times 12 for completion. It combines all the hierarchies we are given with all planets which will appear and are of a major kind, because actually there's maybe 115 different planets in our solar system and more, and then the 12 signs of the zodiac. So what do we have? 8 and 8 is 16, and 2 is 18 is 9. So everything is totaling up to 9. 144 is a completion. 9 is completion. 1728 is completion as well. It's a 9. So adding those three levels together, we will have a picture of some kind of consummation or completion within our solar system. Esoteric numerology. By the way, examine if you can, in Esoteric Psychology 1, his analysis of two words, the number 4, F-O-U-R, and the word for, F-O-U-R, and the word force, F-O-R-C-E. He does a really good clarifying analysis from the point of view of esoteric numerology working with those two words. He gives enough hints so that we understand how we might use the numerology. But one important point for all of us, the Bible can be looked at as an esoteric book. And Jeffrey Hodson wrote a 3-volume series, which was aided by the Brotherhood of Luxor. And let's see, it was Master probably Apollonius of the Brotherhood of Luxor. It's not Polydorus Isuranius, it's Apollodorus Isuranius of the Brotherhood of Luxor helped him write that book. And that book, I think, did I mention it? It's called The Hidden Wisdom of the Holy Bible. And right there is a huge discrepancy between the rather childish way in which so many biblical things are interpreted today and a more deeply esoteric way of interpretation. So it's worth getting a hold of those volumes and checking out the approach, because that might be one way of helping the ready Christian to make the transition into spiritual occultism, which will not at all deny his religion. It will just give deepening to the interpretation. And we do have an educative responsibility in that regard to convey these deeper aspects to people who may be ready for them. The Hidden Wisdom of the Holy Bible, Jeffrey Hodson, Apollodorus Isuranius. That's the so-called Master P, who lives in the United States in a place undisclosed and is part of the fourth ray group and behind much of the psychological development.
And
okay.
That looks like it's all of the questions and comments.
Okay, everybody. Well, we're just about at that point. I want to thank you all for being here. Look, you know, we're proceeding carefully, and before long, well, I do hope, you know, some of you can join us tonight for the real point of the triangle's work, to invoke the goodwill and the light between us and using the Great Invocation, all that. I hope you can join us for that at the usual YouTube channel. But at the same time, behind and underneath this most important approach, the simple approach, the transformative approach, lies all of this academic understanding, potentially, which DK has, obviously, and which he's trying to impart to us with a degree of meticulous detail, meticulous entirety. So, and we just have to be patient with it as we study the different triangles and, sorry, try to get the best out of them. See, you know, basically, if you have a problem and you say, how do I solve this problem? You can find the astrological, rheological factor which, concentrated upon, will help you with the problem, because you will create thought forms which are constructive in relation to the problem. And, you know, there's a way to use color and symbol and sound simultaneously to help with the problem. And when you read Letters on Occult Meditation, you get the idea that you can do that. But sometimes you have a process in which you move from point A to point B to point C. You want to do that. And you can probably find a triangle, whether it's a ray triangle or a planetary triangle or a mixture of planets and signs, or a zodiacal triangle that will help you move from A to B to C. Now, if I, let's say one of the big movements that people like us will be asked to make is the movement from individualism into group consciousness, and if we can stand it, from group consciousness into oneness consciousness. Now, there can be a triangle which, concentrated upon, will allow or promote that movement. And what I would do in that case, if I have that process, I'm an individual, and DK says, disciples are so individual. It's not exactly a compliment. I'm the individual. I want to have group consciousness and to identify as the group, but even more than that, if I'm capable, I want the oneness consciousness. Then I would concentrate on the following triangle: Leo, Aquarius, Pisces. That I would work with those three signs pondering them, trying to apply them, getting the most out of them, and then that triangle would indicate the process that I wanted to achieve. Almost any process that you can think of that would improve your life has a starting point, which is your present condition, has a middle point, which shows you're on your way, and an ending point, which really gives you consummation. And if you don't want to use a triangle, you can just use a duad, a starting point that indicates your condition, and another higher point, which indicates you have made achievement. But usually, the threefold progress is significant. Where are you now? What do you have to move through? And what is your final goal? And you can find triangles to support that. You ponder on them, you feel their energy, you apply their energy or de-emphasize their energy. And, you might want to de-emphasize part of the triangle. Maybe your beginning point, you might want to say, no, I don't want to give in to that anymore, but I want to see what it is, because that's where I am. And then you start moving into something better and higher. And that you want to feel and apply. And then you move again into something still higher, which would be the consummation. Okay. Now, Tui, are you there? I think you are, but anyway. Let us close with the Great Invocation. And then tonight at 6 o'clock, right, Michael? At 6 p.m., we will have the triangles work. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. Thank you, friends, and do choose one process. where you want to move from A to B to C, and see if you can find a ray, planetary, planetary and zodiacal, or zodiacal triangle that will help you do that, and then ponder on the 3 different aspects of it and seek to apply it. It should be a good experiment. See if you can do it. Okay, bye-bye for now, and we will continue with our Ask program. And let's see, Michael, this is full moon week, isn't it? Are you there? Or am I by myself? Well, I think it is full moon week.
This is full moon week. The full moon is on Saturday, the 31st. A very auspicious day for the full moon.
Now, Halloween, is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All Souls Day, or whatever the tradition wants to use.
Yeah. And then we will have also the pre-full moon astrological work, the pre-full moon meditation. And then what time is the full moon, Michael? Does it say there, or will we have to look that up later?
Look at it again.
Okay. But anyway, we always start about, I think Tuya starts about an hour and a half beforehand. So
Michael, we start 1:20 p.m. GMT, and the full moon was something like 2:30 something p.m. GMT.
2:51:29.
Okay. So it's in the afternoon here in Europe.
Yes.
Okay, and then elsewhere, take your chances. Okay.
And due to the pre-full moon webinar at 8 p.m. GMT and the Blue Rose Sisters Pentagram, Sacred Pentagram at 6 p.m. GMT on Friday, the Dissipation of Glamour webinar is postponed.
Okay, but do a lot of work on glamour this week, friends. Think of these glamours that have to be eliminated: manipulation, lying, egotism, all of these things. Let's inwardly cast these things away from the centers of power so that the good may take their place. Thank you, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye now.